You've probably heard of Jack. There are so many stories of him. Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack the Ripper, Jack in Jail, Jack Sparrow. But this was another Jack, completely different Jack. This Jack was a soldier. And Jack one day decided that he did not want to be a soldier anymore. So he grabbed his things, put them on, went to his general and said, "Sir, I've had enough. I don't want to be a soldier anymore. I want to go. I want to make a life. I want to get married. I want to have a life." And the general said, "Very well, Jack. You come back tomorrow. We'll give you the things that you need, and you will be discharged." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Jack. And off he went. And he came back the next day. He said, "General, I'm here. I want to be discharged." So the general gave Jack a pair of trousers, a shirt, and 2 loaves of bread. And Jack took the trousers, took the shirts, took the things, but he didn't want to carry those loaves of bread. He said, "I'm tired. I'm tired of being that the military is always getting me to bring things and take things. No, 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 I don't want to take them." General looked at him and said, "You better take them. Military orders." And Jacob, being the soldier that he was, "Yes, sir." He took those loaves of bread and he put it under his armpits. Ew. And he started off. And he did a day's journey, walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and walking, until finally he found a crossroads. And he was tired because even though he was a soldier, I mean, he was still a human. He did get tired, and he sat down and he thought, "Where should I go? Should I go left? Should I go right?" Until he heard a voice, "Jack, good to see you there, Jack." Jack turned around and he saw an old man that was crippled and humped all the way down. "You know my name?" "Everyone knows your name, Jack." "Is it? What have you got there?" "Oh, I just been discharged from the military. I don't want to be a soldier anymore. And they gave me trousers and a couple of shirts, which is good, but they gave me 2 loaves of bread, and I'm tired of taking things." And the old man said, "You got a loaf of bread? Well, tell you what, Jack. You give me a loaf of bread, and I'll give you something in return." Jack thought, well, anything's better than taking a loaf of bread. So he took the first loaf of bread that was under his armpit, gave it to the man. The man grabbed it and hungrily ate it up. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, said, "For your generosity, Jack, I give you this." It was an old sack. "I don't want to carry anything. I told you that I don't want to carry anything." "Jack, this is no ordinary sack. This is a magic sack. When you point it at something and give it 3 slaps and say, 'Rack, rack it into my sack,' whatever you're pointing at will jump into the sack magically." Magic sack. Sounds right, said Jack. So Jack took the sack, put it over his shoulder, thanked the old man, and took it, because right or left, it didn't really matter to Jack. And he continued walking. And he walked 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 all day long until finally the sun was setting and he came to another crossroads. Jack looked to his left, looked to his right, said, "Where should I go? Well, I guess I should go." "Jack, good to see you there." Jack was so startled, he turned around and he saw another old man that was doubled down. "You know my name. Aren't you the same man that I saw in the other crossroads?" "No, Jack, that was my twin brother, eh?" said Jack. "Say, Jack, you wouldn't have something to eat now, would you?" Help the poor old man there. Jack was delighted to hear, "Yes, I do actually. I'm tired of taking this other loaf of bread that the general gave me. I don't need it. It's under there in my armpit. Well, here you go." "Oh, thank you, Jack." And the man grabbed that loaf of bread and ate it hungrily. When he finished it, again, that old man wiped his face with the back of his hand and said, "For your generosity, Jack, I got something for you." "Okay, I can do that," said Jack. "What you got?" The man put his hand into his pocket and took out a dark crystal and gave it to Jack. Jack took the crystal and said, "Well, this is pretty. It's light. I can take this. That's good. Thank you, sir." "Oh, wait, Jack. Stop. Before you go, I should tell you that crystal is a magic crystal. If you dip it in fresh spring water and put it to your eye, you'll be able to see the angel of death if he's around." "The angel of death?" said Jack. "Well, I don't want this." "It could be useful, Jack. Never," said the old man. And Jack thought about it. He was an idiot. He was not dumb. And he thought, yeah, it could be useful. Okay. Took the crystal, put it in his pocket, grabbed the sack, and he left. And he walked 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 all the way down to sunset. And at dusk, he found himself a place to sleep until the next day. At dawn, Jack got up, stretched himself, and started to walk. And he thought, where should I go? What should I do? And he thought that the best option was to find the first city, the first town, and settle there. And if you find this strange, well, I'm terribly sorry because this is my story. And he walked. And he walked and he walked and he kept on going down that lane until finally, somewhere around midday, he saw a town, a small village. "This is where I'll stay." And he entered that village and went up to the inn and he knocked at the door. "Hello? Is anybody here?" The door opened. "Oh, Jack, it's so good to see you," said the innkeeper. "Well, does everybody here know my name?" thought Jack. "I'm just a soldier." "Oh, of course, everybody knows who you are, Jack. I'm Mrs. Murphy, and what can I do for you, Jack? Well, well, Mrs. Murphy, I just got discharged yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Feels like a week now. I just got discharged yesterday from the military, and I'm looking for a place to stay. And I really don't have much to do yet, but I'm willing to learn some trade or something. And Mrs. Murphy thought, okay. Well, do you have anything to pay for your stay? And Jack, being a military, thought, um, well, no, well, not for now. But you know, once I get into a trade, I can pay you, Mrs. Murphy. And well, unfortunately, the innkeeper couldn't keep him. So Mrs. Murphy said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Jack, but without a pay, I can't keep you. You come back. I will welcome you if you have your you know." Jack knew what she meant, and he didn't want to be a burden. So he thought, well, that's okay, Mrs. Murphy. I'll come back. You do, Jack. And Jack thought if Mrs. Murphy, who was pretty nice, didn't accept him, then he would not be accepted anywhere in the village. Not until he had some money on him, or at least something to trade with. So he walked out of that village, and near there was a forest. Jack went there for some shade. He sat down on the tree, rested his head, when all of a sudden something came from upside. Something had fallen on his head, and he looked up, and lo, what did he see? Some wild turkeys. Wild turkeys in a tree? Well, that's a sight to see, thought Jack. I was wondering, well, perhaps Mrs. Murphy will accept those turkeys from me for instead of pay. Hmm. So Jack, very slowly, so as not to disturb the wild turkeys, took out his sack, pointed it at those turkeys, gave the sack 3 slaps, and said, "Rack, rack, jump in my sack!" And all of a sudden, those turkeys went into the sack. Jack grabbed the sack, closed it up, put it on his shoulder, and went running back to that village all the way to Mrs. Murphy's. Proud of himself was Jack. The door opened. Oh, Jack! Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, you got yourself a pay. I can keep you if you do, said Mrs. Murphy. No, Mrs. Murphy, I'm here on business. You wouldn't be interested in some wild turkeys, would you? Wild turkeys? Oh, you got some wild turkeys, Jack. Oh, that's wonderful. I'd love to have them. And Jack gave the sack to Mrs. Murphy. Mrs. Murphy grabbed those turkeys and went running off into the kitchen. And is that will that keep me for at least a month? Said Jack. And much more. Those turkeys are so expensive. Don't you worry. I will take care of them. And Jack screamed, "All right, but bring me down my sack. Bring it back." Don't worry. Mrs. Murphy was way off into the back, into that kitchen, ready to pluck those turkeys. Jack went up, picked himself a room, and rested for a while. Mrs. Murphy later on came to bring the sack back to Jack. He thanked her. He said he wanted a meal. So he went downstairs, and Mrs. Murphy gave him such a feast some of that turkey, not all of it, of course. And Jack had his fill. He wasn't a rich man, but at least he had somewhere to stay and good food. And he thought, well, now I'm full. I guess I gotta get to know my new village, said Jack. So he went. He went out and he started, just cruising there, looking at the streets, look at one side and another. He walked over a bridge and he walked all the way up to a hill. And on that hill was a fence. And further up that fence was a big, dark house. Jack went up, he looked, said, wow, that's a nice house. What wouldn't I give to get that house? Said Jack. And right beside him was another man. He looked at Jack and said, you want that house, Jack? Oh, does everybody in this place know my name? You're still asking, Jack. Of course everyone knows. Fine. Be that as it may. Yes, I want that house. How much for it? You the owner? And the man looked at Jack and said, yep, I'm the owner. But I can't sell it because it's haunted. Poppycock. Haunted. And the man looked at how Jack didn't believe his words and said, well, I'll make a favor. I'll do you a deal. You can stay one night, one entire night in that house, and the house is yours. And Jack thought, yeah, that, fine. That big old house, that mine. I'm going to go to Mrs. Murphy's right now, and I'm going to get my stuff, and I'm going to come back, and no, wait a minute. You said that house is haunted, right? What's in there? The man smiled and said, thought you didn't believe me, Jack. Well, you never know. What's in there? Haints. I ain't afraid no haints. Oh, so you do believe in haints, huh? Well, haints I do, yeah. Yeah, they're real. Uh-huh. Jack thought, yeah, but I can take care of them. So he looked at the man and said, I'm going to stay at that house. And I'm going to keep it. He turned around, went back to Mrs. Murphy's, grabbed his sack, grabbed his stuff, told the innkeeper that he would be away for one night so she should reserve his room. And then he went all the way up, across that bridge, up that hill, went past the fence, turned around, looked at the man and said, I'll see you in the morning. And he opened that dark door. And he walked in. And each time his foot was placed on that floor, the floor creaked. The sun was starting to set. And he knew that haints would come at around midnight, if there were any. Jack built himself a fire in that fireplace. It was a beautiful fireplace. Grabbed the nice, big chair, sat himself down, and fell asleep. And when the clock struck midnight, he heard a sound. Jack looked to one side. He looked to another. He heard again. And he looked up. And there, on the ceiling, was a big, huge green blob that was starting to drip and drip and drip, and suddenly, boom! It was right in front of him on the floor. And from that blob that looked like snot came out some long fingers. And from those fingers, long arms. And from that blob came 2 feet coming out, webbed feet. And it's as if it was barfing out a huge head, and from that head came 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth that was full of fangs. And that haint looked at Jack greedily. "We're gonna eat you, Jack," said the haint. And Jack heard at the back some more haints. "We're gonna eat you." Jack stood up. He went to one side and said, "I ain't afraid of you." The haints went slowly surrounding Jack until finally they were around him. And Jack looked, he thought what he was going to do, until one of them, who was a little bit crazy, said, wait guys, before we eat him, Jack, you know how to play cards?" Yeah, cards," said the other ones. And Jack thought, well, this is insane, but okay. Of course I know how to play cards. I'm a soldier. We always play cards. "Guys, let's not eat him yet. Let's play some rounds." So the Haints magically drew up a huge table. Jack was on one side, the Haints were on the other, and one of them started to deal the cards. And the Haints thought, well, let's make it interesting. Let's put it a bet. Okay, a bet it is. And the Haints pulled out their hands and started to wiggle their fingers. And from those fingers came gold and silver and jewels and pearls and all the types of precious things that you could possibly imagine. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. And he thought, well, if it's going to be a bet, I don't have anything. Oh, wait a second, Haints. I don't have anything to bet. I got to have something. The Haints threw out their hands all the way to Jack's side, started to wiggle their fingers. Gold, silver, jewels, pearls, diamonds, sapphires, rubies, all these precious things came out of the Haints' hands. And they started the games. The first hand, Jack won. And the second hand, the Haints won. The third hand, Jack won. And the fourth hand, the Haints won. And then Jack. And then the Haints. And then back and forth and back and forth and back and forth almost the entire night. It was a draw. Until finally the Haints got fed up. They said, let's eat him, yeah! And they all started to go after Jack. And Jack ran to where his sack was. He grabbed his sack, opened it up, pointed it to the Haints, gave it 3 slaps, boom, 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 rack, rack, into the sack. And went into the sack. Jack closed that sack, put it near the door, and then sat down on the big sofa and fell asleep. In the morning, Jack took the sack and went out with a big, huge smile, went to the man, said, "Here are your haints, sir." The man couldn't believe what he saw. After all these years, finally, one man was able to rid that house of those haints. The man grabbed that sack and said, "I'm going to go drown them right now." "All right, fine, but bring back my sack," said Jack. "Yes, yes, yes, and the house is yours." Who needs a house that big and that old anyway? And the man went all the way to the river and drowned those haints, went back, gave back the sack to Jack, and left. Jack went inside his new house. And you know what was there? Gold and jewels and pearls and silver and sapphires and rubies and diamonds, everything the haints had left him. Jack stashed everything away, grabbed a few golden coins into his pocket. Jack was rich. Now he had a house. Now he had money. But you know what was left that Jack was missing? Let's just say company. So Jack went out. He was very happy. He started to walk a little bit further than that village until he found a big mansion. And there he was a porch. And on that porch, probably you and I can imagine what he saw. A beautiful girl. She was just sitting there, using her fan. Jack saw that beautiful woman. That beautiful woman saw Jack, and love at first sight. And I don't know about you, but in those days, there was an entire language with the fans. And women would grab the fans and they would send messages to their gentlemen with the fan. If the fan was, very slow, it meant, you know what? I have no interest in you. If the fan went a little bit faster, it meant we have something special. Well, that fan, it was going very fast, sending messages saying, "I love you, but she couldn't say it, not yet at least. And Jack knew that he had to court her for at least some time before he could ask her to marry him. So that's what he did. He would pass each day in front of that house. He would tip his hat and say, "Good morning, my lady." That lady would grab her fan and she would use it so fast. "Good morning, Jack." Just a few more months and oh. And that's what they did until finally a few months had passed in this courtship and Jack was ready to ask her to marry him. And on that special day, Jack went. And he was about to, to go to that porch where he saw his fair maiden. But she was not there. He went up, knocked on the door. The door opened. Cling. It was her father, drowning in tears. Jack was startled. What happened? Where is she? Oh, Jack, said the father. I wish you were here. She's dying. I don't know what happened. Just last night, I told her to come back in early, but she wouldn't listen. She was waiting for you, and now I'm afraid that she's dying. Jack was heartbroken, and he said to the father, well, if she's going to leave us, can I at least say goodbye? Yes, Jack, of course. And the father took Jack where the young girl was lying. She was pale. She didn't look well. And Jack went up to where she was. And right beside her was a pitcher of fresh spring water. Jack stealthily put his hand inside his pocket and took out the dark crystal, dipped it in, and put it to his eye, and started to see if the angel of death was nearby. He saw it. Very slowly, he put down that crystal, put it into his pocket again, took out that sack, opened it, pointed it at the angel of death, hit it 3 times, and said, "Rack, rack, inside the sack." And the angel of death went inside. Jack quickly closed that sack and ran out of that house all the way to the forest, to the highest tree, to the furthest branch, and tied that sack there. He went down that tree and ran back to that house, went up the stairs into the bedroom where the girl was and her father, and wow, she was already looking better. So much better that she blushed when she saw Jack. Oh, Jack, what are you doing here? I thought I would never see you again. And Jack said, I've come to ask you to marry me. Oh, Jack, I do, she said. And they were married. And they had a wonderful life. They had children, and their children had children. And their grandchildren had children. And their great grandchildren had children. And their great 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 grandchildren had children. And Jack saw all these generations. And he was happy, sort of, because as he was growing older, so was the rest of the people. But it looked as if no one was dying. And so many years had passed that Jack, who could once walk through that village from his house all the way to Mrs. Murphy in 5 minutes, it took him 3 days to get there. And if it was not enough, he was so old that his head was bowed down, and his nose was so long that it made a furrow through that dirt, trying to get to where he wanted to go. And as he was walking, another man passed him, and it was not only his nose, but also his chin that was making 2 furrows. And when they Jack tipped something of his hat. Good morning. And the man tipped what he could. Good morning, Jack. How do we get this? Oh. And the man said, Oh, Jack, it's a long story, but to make it short, some idiot apparently has caught the angel of death. No one can die. We just get older and older and older. And oh my gosh, I it's gonna get miserable. Of course, Jack knew that the idiot was him, and he knew what he had to do. He slowly went back to his house, asked his great 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 grandchildren to get him his rifle. He took his rifle and he started to walk very slowly down that hill, over the bridge, through the village, the way to that forest. I'm not even going to tell you how long it took. Until finally he reached that tall tree. On the furthest branch was the sack. Jack slumped down, loaded his rifle, and started to shoot that sack. Until finally the hole was big enough and the angel of death went out. But this story does end well because Jack was the first one the angel of death came for. And he started to take away all those poor old people. For 500 years had passed from the day since he was caught in that sack. Thankfully, the angel of death was merciful to Jack and did not leave him there. No, he took him and he started to collect all those people, all those souls, and everything again was right in the world. And that's, well, at least that's what Jack's great, 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 great granddaughter told me when she told me this story. So please, if you find the angel of death, don't capture it. We're better off as we are. And that is my story.